have no idea if the tarot has any role to play in the 21st century. I feel safer in assuming that the tarot will be a fringe activity. We cannot count on the tarot or any divination form as a mainstream source for insight. Our mainstream source for insights are Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Tiger Woods will guide us through the darkness.
I think the work that Enrique is doing is fundamental to a massive shift that is about to happen in tarot.
I like his approach because it's fresh, it's unusual, breaking up all the suppositions that people have about the tarot.
He doesn't feel he's psychic, but he feels that there's a story going on in the cards, and he's wonderful at playing with words.
His imagination is muscular and supple and flexible, and that moves through his readings like an animal.
I like Enrique's approach because it's based so much on just the image. What is the image doing?
When he was here and we had a group of like 10 or 15 people reading, we'd all be like these amazingly insightful people. And then he'd leave and we'd be like, hey, what happened?
In order to speak the language of the Marseille Tarot, we need to be dumb.
We see a renaissance of tarot, and Enrique's work is most important because it is demonstrating a contemporary and considered approach to these 78 pieces of cardboard.
A skeleton is an alphabet. It's a limited set of elements arranged in a very specific, very meaningful order. But if we were to rearrange the elements, we will get a different creature, a different animal. Just as when we rearrange the alphabet, we get different words, different sounds, different images. Or when we rearrange a tarot deck, we get different messages.
He really has a way of turning the ordinary into poetry. So when he takes, say, 3 cards, he'll start talking about the interactions between the pictures and what's happening. And what you do in your mind, you just start connecting it to your life, and the story comes out.
It's so much about story, about the stories the cards inspire, not specifically what was necessarily intended.
Card number 13, the card without a name, is the only card in which the main character is sticking out of the picture frame. That happens because the skeleton is just coming back into the picture. He was out of there, using the side to erase the card's name. The skeleton is erasing language.
As a cultural artifact, those old tarot have a aesthetic beauty that the contemporary tarot doesn't have. Those old tarot still respond to a moment in which the author was irrelevant. To the left, remembrance. To the right, l'avenir. Those who look straight at you are seeing the present. Sit passively, stand receptively, and walk actively. Embody your destination.
If you ask somebody to imagine that they're doing something in the card, they get one message. If you ask them to physically do it, a whole other message comes through, because there's body knowledge that's different than our intellectual knowledge.
We all mirror ourselves in these cards, to an extent. And that's why they work, you see, because we actually know it instantly. I mean, these cards have this power to activate in ourselves some kind of desire, to recognize, if you like, what we are really dealing with, you see.
The Marseille Tarot is a system of gestures, and in every single character we see a posture that somehow means something to us because we have experienced that situation, we have been there, we have enacted that actual gesture. Where are you going? It's always reflected by your body. The body shows the destination of the mind. So anything that we see the characters doing somehow is a representation of their mind state. The woman in the world, we see that woman looking back, but her legs are moving forward. She's crossing that mandorla. She's suggesting, I'm done with this. I'm ready to go. Forget about the fact that this woman is the empress. Do what the image is doing. Sit down, grab onto your stuff. It's as dumb, as simple as that.
That's huge. Body poses and gestures and the direction that they're looking are huge.
If you're just reading one card, you're going to notice, and the card is an image, you're going to say, well, what's happening? What is it doing? And if the page is looking over in a certain direction, well, what's over there?
So he's very vertical plane, and he has this like low side gaze.
Well, like if you look at my painting, right? The future is already suggested by the pose, and that's how you read art. So the same thing, if she was a tarot card, I'd want to know where she's going. So if it's another card over here, then if she's going ahead, she's going to go to this card. If there's a card over there, she's going away from that card.
You sometimes have to make people look at a card, since I want them to think about the picture. I want to discuss the picture with them. I want to say, look at the posture of these women, or, where is this night going to?
All the characters in the tarot are doing something with their hands that somehow gives you an idea of what they are thinking. You have the hermit using a lantern to somehow see somewhere, but at the same time using a cane to feel the road. What is what he wants to accomplish? He wants to find his way. What is what you want to do? What is what you want to create? What is what you want to make happen? I can see that in your hands. I was born in Caracas, in Venezuela. There is a river in Venezuela, and it's the only country in the world where someone at some point in the 20th century decided this river looks so nice that we are going to pour shit on it. So they transformed this river that crosses the whole city into the main sewer system. This journalist was writing about this head that appeared in the river. The river washed out this head, and it was so the head was in such a bad shape that you couldn't recognize the person. So what they did was to take the head, put it in a glass bell, and in a public exhibition, and every day they would change the makeup. So one day they will put a mustache on the head, the next day the head will have like a blonde wig, and they were hoping that someone will recognize the person by changing the head's features every day. So that's the country where I come from. I always find playgrounds are very similar to jail, I mean, you're here kind of taking care of an inmate. There is a part of every single day that is like this. I sit at a park and I try to write or to read. I mean, Vanessa is always there, otherwise it will be impossible.
How do you feel about Enrique's work with the tarot and what he's doing?
I think he does bring extraordinary experiences into everyday life.
What do you mean?
Well, every day I get home from work and it's, so how was your day? And you start talking about it, but he's meeting incredible people and really changing people's lives, or I don't know, he has a way of bringing a lot of beauty into very common, everyday, ordinary things. And it makes it very interesting.
You're hired.
Oh, I'm hired. I guess that's what makes the friendship or the conversation ongoing. Sorry.
See, this is life. Life is a constant conversation that gets interrupted every 5 minutes.
The idea that there is a connection between the images that we put on the table and our lives, or the world, the universe, whatever the universe means. The universe is another of those words I'm allergic to. Universe, archetypes, chakras. Let's not go there. There is no connection. You have no control on which images are going to fall on the table. And we are actually betting our lives on it.
So in the tarot we have 26 symbols. We have 22 images that we know that they are famous: death, the devil, the tower, the emperor, the empress. And we have 4 symbols that come from the pip cards: swords, wands, cups and coins. I really don't know what they mean. What I do know is what they represent in terms of how do we use those symbols.
There's almost a sense of grasping a baton to go forth and create your own perspective, your own mark on the world.
A wand is a big stick. This is a whole lot of nourishment. Trouble. Massive trouble.
We count from 1 to 10. There is no need to impose any symbolic numerological value into those numbers. So we can see almost like a little soap opera here, you know. This is me. I'm full, ready to give all this love, all this passion that we know we share when we are drinking with friends or drinking with people we like. This is me ready for battle. I'm holding my sword. This is a date, first date, right? 2 people. This is a duel, 2 swords engaged. One of these 2 people could be asking, who is this person? Do you know him? Somehow the duel turns into a battle, and that battle grows. And this is turning more into a party than a date. It gets louder, louder. It's the sound of swords. The party gets louder, more complicated. Clash of swords becoming, it's almost like an orchestra. At some point, someone gets drunk, turns the cup down, falls on the ground. It's the end of the party.
When he looks at a number, you know, we might say the number 4 means there's a solid foundation in its structure. And he'll look at the 4 and say, it's an L kissing an I. And he'll look at the structure and there's a cup in the middle. And he pulls the number apart until its finest pieces.
We have 1 coin, then 5 coins, and then 10 coins. The first idea that comes to mind is just one word, more.
It's great to think that the voice can do the same thing that truck does. You know, that truck goes around the city with these huge brushes or broomsticks, you know, around cleaning up, brushing up the surface of the ground, making the city, the streets cleaner. So you draw through your voice your attention towards something else in the cars or towards the cars in themselves, and you erase, you clean them up from all that esoteric baggage. So in a sense, I'm doing the same thing a sanitation worker does. I just don't have a pension.
I see the tarot as a far more esoteric language than Enrique does. But it's great because tarot as a common language allows us to discuss those things without conflict.
Well, the word occult means hidden. It just means something that's not seen. And the idea is that there's a kind of secret teaching in things that's not on the surface.
What we call occult exists because of occultists. It gets confusing because there's this certain modern myth. In other words, well, the tarot is obviously made by occultists and they put all these secret messages in it that would have been heretical to the church, and the church would have burned them at the stake, so they had to hide them, and they were all Kabbalists. And if you look at the facts, none of the facts support any of this myth. It's sort of this romantic myth.
There's something going on with the imagery that works, regardless of where you are in terms of astrology, Kabbalah, any of the occult disciplines. It's the cards themselves that are speaking.
At the end of the day, it's the picture, it's the photograph. What is the look? What is the pose? What are the colors telling us?
Jebelon, who was the first occultist to write about the tarot, he was saying, suppose I told you that the ancients left us this incredible book with all the occult secrets of the universe, that everything we wanted to know, and it's right on our nose and we don't even recognize it because they disguise it as a deck of cards. That's a really powerful myth.
I would love to say, this came from some great, hidden occult knowledge, and this was under some pyramid that the first one was found. That would be so fun to say, and I think it gives it more of a dramatic flair. But in truth, it's really just people creating something and trying to make it better.
The connection between the tarot and the Kabbalah, nonsense. The connection between the astrology and the tarot, made up by Paul Christian. The tarot came from Egypt. That's nonsense. The tarot is the fool's journey. It's the development of the self. Nonsense. The tarot is It represents the archetypes. Nonsense. Carl Jung is the most popular author in the tarot world, and he never wrote a book about the tarot. He wrote 2 lines. If you are interested in the tarot, I just ask you, look at the cards and describe what you see.
I'm not an expert on the tarot, but I don't think one needs to be an expert on the tarot to appreciate it and to play with it. It's a game. I think everyone can interpret the images according to according to whatever symbol they want to associate them to. There's not necessarily a series of rules. You make the rules. You know, you create your own universe.
Pero no, sí, pero no ahorita, mi amor. Estamos buscando otro parque más chiquito. Ven, Andrea. Último. Se va a acabar, ven. Good. Ven.
No, it was very normal. Actually, I had a beautiful family, a brother, my mother, my father. We were raised with a lot of love. I guess that's why I grew up feeling that family is the silence. I mean, family is that place where you go to be in silence, to be quiet, to have a simple life. You know, I feel that the first years here, I still was a tourist. You walk around and somehow all your exchanges are commercial exchanges. You go into a place to buy something, to pay for something, then you leave, you go home. But everything, the buildings, the houses, they are like a facade, like a Hollywood scenery, because you don't have connections with the city or with the people who lives in there. And my way of making that connection was through the tarot. I started sitting in a little coffee shop that doesn't exist anymore to do readings for free, and people started sitting, and I started to have a connection. You know, I started to make a connection, and people started to understand that I was there, and I was available, and I was me somehow. You know, it's weird. I know it's not easy to explain. When you move into a different place, you become like a ghost. You walk around and no one sees you. You know? There is no connection to the ground. And eventually I feel that the tarot gave me that.
We take the fact that we read from left to right as suggesting that a character will be either looking at the past or looking at the future or looking at the present. In this case, they are looking at the past. So there is this idea of, okay, I'm revisiting things that already happened. First, trying to regain some sort of balance or trying just to process, to digest that. But then that process of digestion becomes these 2 horses. In other words, it's time at some point of moving on. We try to digest, we try to process, we try to come to terms with something, and then we just move on. That's the story you tell. And I think it's very important that somehow that has no inherent symbolic quality, meaning I'm not trying to express one thing in terms of another one. I'm literally describing what is on the cards.
You know, it's like when people say, well, you shouldn't write long things on the internet because people doesn't read. They don't interest me. People who doesn't read, they don't interest me. People who can't deal with abstract ideas, they don't interest me. They are excluded from what I do. I do feel that the Marseille Tarot has a very specific language that you can learn, but it's not easy.
If there's one great enemy to anything, it is a belief that you can have anything worth having easily or quickly. Instant expertise is not only a lie, it's an evil lie, because it teaches people not to learn.
There's the flower here, the flower here, the flower here. So there has to be an exchange, there has to be a dialogue, there has to be a negotiation for the queen to grant this coin, which is consistent with the idea of swords turning into coins, a battle turning into negotiation, something that can hurt you turning into something that can nourish you.
If you talk to tarot people, you will have people tell you whatever you read is the truth. Whatever you see in the cards, that's accurate, that's real. You already know how to read the cards. You just open the cards and you look at them and you can read them instantly. Well, sure, because if I show a baby a picture of a dog on fire and the baby knows what a dog is and what fire is, they might get upset. But by the same token, if I showed a baby a picture of a dog and a fire before it knew what a dog or a fire was, it would not get upset. It would just be colors. So, yeah, sure, whatever the baby sees is accurate, but only based on what the baby's context is.
There's an actual power in having the ability to manipulate symbols that is real, is tangible, is technical, is a craft. I have no way to need to go into the idea of a superior source or supernatural source. No, images are made by people. I see Jean-Claude as the ultimate card maker. You're looking at cards that feel, look, and are exactly the same way the cards used to be 300 years ago.
He made life-size metal cutouts of some of the cards, and he made some that are smaller, they're probably about yay big, and put them all around in different shops around Saint-Suzanne, France. So one of the beauties of Saint-Suzanne is you walk around and you try to find all of the images.
I think the really great decks come from a kind of insanity. Flournoy does this. The ferocity of his craziness, the devotion. It's like a 13th century nun. I imagine himself flagellating himself as he gets the vegetable dyes to the right blend.
I did my best at not becoming a tarot reader, meaning that I was really, really obsessed at the possibility of finding a different kind of system, medium, something that will be more contemporary, more up-to-date. And it's probably because of Jean-Claude and Roxanne that I stuck to the tarot.
A stained glass window was a text. You read it. Everyone knew how to read an image. We're lazy. This is again back to Enrique. This is exactly what Enrique does. Enrique says, let's take this symbol and strip it down to bones, and then put the bones together in a new, amazing, non-natural configuration.
At some point I started using the alphabet as an example or as a way to understand the tarot. The individual, the letter I, is the simplest trace we can make, just a vertical trace, like a person standing.
Perhaps we have three people just pushing each other, walking in the same direction. The letter H becomes this number 2, like in Roman numerals, or maybe 2 eyes, and at the same time it becomes the sun card, the two twins facing each other.
If we were to place that letter in a different position, we can see boobs. We see the C, it's the letter I that rotates. A profile, a nose, a beard.
The word poultry or beef or pork, they sound beautiful, and to me they look amazing. They're just great. It's nice that the way the word pork sounds like poke. So it could be like poking at someone, but porking at someone. Every single image in itself has no meaning. We look at the letters as shapes. All the letters in the alphabet we can make fit into some sort of human physical action. The stuff language reveals, those places where words will take you, that's just so fantastic. E-M-U, emu. Like a big bird hiding in a wall. We start projecting ourselves in them and seeing a head, a body, and this slanted position, someone who is moving forward. Oh boy.
I look at the word to look at the word. And I look at the shape, the shape of the word. It's just beautiful.
So far it seems like if I'm talking about letters, but in truth I'm talking about the tarot.
I look at the death card and I'm actually looking at that skeleton and I'm looking at the shapes, because by looking at the shapes I can see something.
I actually find a lot more interesting just to listen to that guy speaking, screaming in some sort of language that I don't understand. It's pure shape or pure form. He's speaking in sausages. You don't know what it is. It's just sausages falling, on the ground and bouncing. It's tasty, savory, meaty. The idea of making anagrams is suggested in the King of Wands, because the King of Wands is sitting here with this huge scepter that in itself looks like a pen that is actually pointed towards the letters of his name. You have here the word on, a, B-A-R, on, a, bar, S-T-A-Y, stay, on, a, bar. The idea that you can take one word and shuffle it so you create more words, that somehow mirrors what happens with tarot cards and how you take all these cards, you shuffle them all the time and you create new narratives, new ideas, new meanings, new messages.
Tarot continues to be operative in modern society because it's communicating visually. And this is why Enrique is very smart to use tarot in a poetic way, because poetry does not literally try and describe something to you. It tries to describe the indescribable by offering a sense of what something is.
The deck of cards that he uses is often one of the most difficult to read.
And he's using an ancient deck. He's using the Marseille deck, right? Which is just incredible. The one that's least used today.
Because the pip cards, the 1 to 10s, there's no diagram on them of a picture of somebody doing something. There's just 5 coins or 5 rods.
He's taking you on this mental journey that's so far away from tarot, but it was exactly what I needed.
Artists today spend so much time fabricating artworks so that the meaning of the artwork gets in the background, gets almost forgotten. And I think Enrique can very well reflect on this very light idea that you just take, write it down or enjoy it and then blow it into the world.
Here's this guy, right, that claims to not know very much about the cards in terms of traditional ways of reading. And yet he is kind of taking it into a mainstream focus.
I believe he refers to the language of the birds, the French understanding of that concept, and playing with sound, playing with images.
I started reading Enrique's things, and it all of a sudden became, well, I'm just looking at pictures, and the pictures are telling me something, and I'm sort of making up a story.
On the froth of everything that is being created in time, the tarot seems to have stabilized, and I think Enrique has a similar idea, that it has stabilized as a set of 78 images that we respond to in some way.
See, here we have the Three of Swords, we have the Hermit. At one level, everything else fades away, and
you only see these two red elements, these two red lines, kind of talking to each other.
As opposed to focusing on the occult and the metaphysical, he focuses on the image, the pure image, and what that image says.
You know, it's the difference between somebody who writes poetry and a poet.
He's coming also from a very practical standpoint.
What he's doing, and it's really quite simple, he says it's straightforward. He says, look, I am reading poetry, and I'm reading the theories of poetry as if they are talking about Tarot.
What I find interesting in his writing is also the fact that he's very poetic and deconstructive at the same time. He really takes the pain to see how perhaps what we describe in a card at the level of its formal properties and what kind of emotion it elicits. So we go from the visual aspect of the card to even considering how the very name of the card may enhance what we can see in the card. So playing with the cards in the way in which he does becomes more meaningful, if you like, rather than just going with what we find in books. You know.
I feel that with the court cards, there's always a lot of drama. There's always a lot of human drama, or drama we can understand in human terms. Very direct, very courtly, medieval-ish terms.
He has a two-step mantra. He says, why don't you just begin with looking at what is happening in the cards, and then proceed to the next question. How does that make you feel?
The position of these two bodies reinforces the disgust we see in their faces. It's like if they really don't want to have anything to do with each other. At one level, everything in the images seems to suggest that they are pulling apart, and then the yellow takes you to this moment of closeness in which they are almost about to touch hands, as if they don't want anybody to know or anybody to notice. The King of Wands and the King of Swords are looking at the same place, somewhere towards our right. They are sharing the same experience, and it is almost as if the King of Wands is about to advise the King of Swords about what to do. They share a common enemy, they share a common problem, maybe they share a common desire from some queen or lady we are not looking at.
Yeah, he did a reading for me, and it's more like poetry than it is a reading. I mean, it's a reading, but it's like a piece of art, and it's almost as if he gave me a painting, or he gave me something I could sort of look at over and over and over again and get something different out of it every time I look at it.
The way Enrique walks you through the image, it starts to make sense, and then you see things in the images that make sense to your present situation.
When I heard him do those readings on our show the first time, I felt like I was falling in love with those cards. And that as simple as those images were, to me, my life was woven in them, and I saw them for something different than what I was looking at on that piece of paper. It was just a magical experience. I felt like I just needed to hear a lot more from him, experience it again, learn more, because I'd never heard anybody read like that before.
We are human beings, we are people, so it's impossible for me, and I guess impossible for most people, not to be drawn immediately to the middle card, because we see a person here. I just see a woman sitting, waiting for this flower to emerge, and then I see nighttime. Perhaps all these scimitars that are pointy and sharp and aggressive becomes the two dogs. The flower becomes the moon. Here it is trapped, just as La Papesse feels a little bit trapped. Here she's free, and somehow a dog barking to the moon makes no difference. In the context of the reading, whatever the reader says is assumed to be about the other person, and that person will do a search in her mind or his mind to make meaning, to find the piece of information that fits with the words of the reader. It is a beautiful illusion, and I somehow presented as such. I mean, I'm not trying to pose as anything else. Temperance. That woman is temperance. But as soon as I put the star next to it, temperance ceases to be temperance. Because the woman we see in the star card is using these jars, these vases, to pour water in a stream. And the same jars are the ones we see in temperance. So at that point, the jars in temperance, the jars in the star, are all that matters. I find a profound beauty on that. You may get La Papesse, but when you put the tower next to La Papesse, we see the same form with the same crown falling apart. So you don't care anymore about if this woman is a woman, is the mother, she's a nun, she's is practicing celibacy, she's the Holy Church. You don't care if the tower is the house of God, is purgatory, is hell. You only care about the fact that there is a crown in place that then falls apart. And that rhyme that's the message, that's the meaning in that moment of those two cards together. All the rest is irrelevant. That language is unique to the Marseille Tarot. What I lament is that people won't see that.
So once we identify that move, you see, from the regimented act of, measuring the liquid, the water, that goes from one cup to the other, and then we can think alchemy and we can think all sorts of things. So going from that regimented move to the other card, where we see that, nobody bothers with any kind of measuring anymore. See? So now we can just let it pour. See? So once we identify that there is something nice that has just happened, you see, then we begin to actually see the significance of the two cups, you see. And then we go back actually to seeing them being held, you see. How are they being held, or why do I get this feeling? And so that's what is happening, how does it make you feel, you see. So we always go back to that two-step mantra.
This image in itself, it's so many things or nothing, and then you put this one here, and you can imagine that the woman is opening the lion's mouth so that she can pour water on it, which is very different from seeing the same card together with this one. Then we have the woman opening the young lion's mouth so this guy can use the lantern and see what is inside. It's almost like a movie, you see. See the small angel here on the back, then the angel comes, takes half of the image, and then the angel lands on the ground and takes the whole image. Every single card contains part of another card. Gracias. Perfecto.
People also stop looking as soon as they think they understand what they're seeing. As soon as they can put a name to something, they stop looking at it. So for example, let's say that I now know that you're Kimmy. I see you coming down the hall. I said, oh, there's Kimmy. And I stop looking. Now there may be a million things going on with you, but because I've recognized you, I no longer have to think about those things. And as a result, people are not very observant.
Here's the secret to life. You ready? Here's the secret to life. I will tell you. Paying attention. Boom. That's it. There is no substitute for paying attention. You know what tarot is at root? Whenever people are like, what is tarot? And I'll say, paying attention. When you pay attention, you can't not get a message.
We look at these two images and we immediately see the dialogue between the stiff scepter the queen is holding and the almost sensuous branch that is being offered to her. And she always looks so depressed. She always looks so heavy. She's looking for that other wand to exchange her useless scepter for something that is alive, that can bring happiness to her life. The queen becomes a sword poking inside a crown, trying to figure out what is making her so unhappy. This coin floating in the middle of the air looks bigger than the coin the valet is actually holding. This one is pursuing, chasing something that looks so appealing, so huge, and maybe when you actually grab it, you realize it's not such a big deal. So we can say that a star turns into a skull. We can say that a woman turns into a skeleton. We can say that water turns into a scythe. We can say that a lake turns into a blade. We can say that water turns into mud. And we keep getting this rhythm that in itself is poetry.
I think that formal coherence and the way that formal coherence repeats itself from card to card and creates these little systems of symmetries, of rhymes, that's unique to the Marseille Tarot.
The kid, the vase, the plate, the devil, it's also this guy and the Pope, and he then turns into this dog in the moon, and we can see then the dog as the table in the magician, or the table as the woman in the star. We can see this severed head, this little head, as this praying man, and the praying man as the horse is the lion as the man falling. Every card takes us to another card. Every card finds its answer, finds its resemblance in another image. Two little devils, two plates on a scale, two vases on temperance, two boys embracing in the sun. The Marseille Tarot is full of poetry.
Look at this diagonal. The cane in the full rhymes with the scythe and death, and then that rhymes with this stream of water and temperance, and then that rhymes with this flame, blue flame we see in the tower. So we see the same diagonal moving up or moving down. And again we can see this cat as this head as this vase as this man. Temperance can be the tower, the two vases are the two men.
The cards on the table, they behave like a homeless man who is crazy and is rambling. And you can look at the cards and you can see a million things, and you can start talking. And that's why, I mean, if there is no question, I'd rather start singing, you know. Just, okay, this rhymes with this goes with that, this. You sing a song about the tarot. Because if there is no question, there is only rambling. But when you have a question, you narrow down all that rambling, all that madness into something specific, and you can then map analogies. So there was this woman who wanted to know if she had this question, if she will ever have kids, and or if she will have to adopt. There was the world, the hangman, the empress, and the fool. So I told her, and I didn't use these words, but I told her, the world is a vagina. Then we have the baby. The hangman is a baby. But I can only see the world as a vagina and the hangman as a baby because she's asking me a question about getting pregnant. Otherwise, the world is the world and the hangman is the hangman. You have the vagina, you have the baby, but then you have a mother that is looking how the fool is walking away. And again, I don't know if the story has any connection with reality. I'm just telling the story I see in the cards. Is that there is a pregnancy, but then the guy walks away. If you train yourself to see similarities, connections between different things in the world, you are training yourself to speak the language of the tarot.
You see, her hair is exactly the same color as the dog's hair. So there you have your visual poetry. It's funny, anything you stop ignoring becomes absolutely fascinating. You know, you stop ignoring a person or a fly or a bug or the people walking around you, and they become fascinating. I guess that there is always a lot of information in the cards, and we are always opening and closing. We are always choosing what to pay attention to, what to ignore.
I like the idea that the cards in themselves tell you what to pay attention to and what to ignore. So when you find two things in two cards that are similar, you say, okay, I need to pay attention to this, and I need to ignore the rest. We have this person struggling with the lion. The lion is in front of the person, so the person cannot move forward, and the lion is big. Then we see the same lion that became small, and now it's behind the person, and the person is walking. So we have the same idea, the same problem, the same issue we were struggling with in the first card is that issue we leave behind in the second card. Well, here we have kind of the opposite idea. Perhaps that little creature that was bothering the person, that little issue that was nagging at the person, becomes so big that now it cannot be ignored, it has to be dealt with. So we have a sense of motion and then a stop, a halt.
You enter the world of these images with that intent to look at what is happening in the card. Then you don't at the same time think, oh, actually, let me see if I can bring my own cultural baggage to this, you see, and then perhaps read whatever my ailment or predicament is, into this. So you don't have any of that. So I think that approach is very efficient because it is the least judgmental.
I've sat down next to readers who have literally memorized 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack, and you sit down next to them and you listen, you go, what? That's coming out of Rachel Pollack's mouth verbatim. They're not reading the cards, they're reciting.
Every time you put the card down, you really should be paying attention to what's there, rather than going click, 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 okay, this card means that. So you look at the picture fresh. Okay, what does it mean right now? What does it mean for this person? What connection can we make? So there's that, but then also, you start seeing things in the world that actually you might not have noticed. Ways in which the world resembles tarot cards.
Actually, if you don't mind, let's walk one more block. This world is a window into a mirror.
This building reminds me of the Suite of Swords because it shows this beautiful, very soft flower encased inside this very sharp structure made from metal. Flames in themselves could take us to the Tower card. So this is clearly the Ace of Swords. We are here. Beautiful, perfect, peaceful, happy, luminous place, guarded by a wall, by a fence. It's like the Garden of Eden. 2 towers, 2 buildings, 2 dogs. The idea of loneliness, and then we have this lonely passage with these 2 walls, 2 buildings. It's almost like a recreation of the moon in itself, or the moon card. We have a light shade of green turning into a darker one, that darker one turning into an even darker one, then gray turning into reddish brown turning into wine or very dark brown turning into green, green turning into lighter green, light green turning into emerald green turning into sap green turning into navy green turning into apple green. This is not only poetry in itself, but at the same time there is a narrative there. Color is a quality of things that all the time is telling us how time is affecting those things. It's very easy to map colors to emotion because the intensity of a color kind of overlaps analogically with the intensity of emotions. Here we have almost like a pear blushing. Color starts like blurting out and taking over the whole surface of the fruit. And then as soon as the fruit gets orange, it starts getting black. You start getting all the black, the dark spots, death taking over. So you have the whole experience of life in one fruit. It can make fruits a little bit depressing.
I think Enrique is more a conceptual artist. So he's not making anything and he doesn't have a studio, which is very... it's a very common thing for an artist not to have a studio. Yeah, I think he's an artist, conceptual artist who thinks things and they do not have to be executed.
You have a symbol and then you have a context. You have the symbol or the sign of the X, you have the symbol and the sign of the heart, and then you place that in a certain context and it says something. You place it in a certain context, it says something different. Of course, it's a shame that in this case, this guy decided that he had to cancel all of the men's crutches and love all of the women's crutches instead of mixing a little bit. Maybe maybe green deserved his love. Maybe red should have been cancelled. But in any case, it's interesting how the image of the heart interacts with the image of a woman's womb, or here the image of the X interacts with the image of the man's crutch. Images are speaking, are talking all the time. I'm just seduced by this. Somehow it looks like the map of a mind, It looks almost like a prehistoric cave. In those caves in France and in Europe, the old caves where the bisons and the lions are, they had those hands. People just saying, I was here, I'm here. This is me. If you think about it, the whole mural accounts for a self-portrait. Someone came here and just vomit on the wall all what the person had in their minds, Maybe it was Jimmy.
I guess that's the moment that defines everything else. We do whatever it is that we do because we feel that somehow we are coping with that fear of death and we are leaving something behind or transcending that. My role as a tarot reader or whatever is to be a translator, and that's it. Signs don't care about us. You go out on the street and the red light is not going to cry if you just keep going, and it's not going to be happy if you stop. The light doesn't care about what you do. The tarot doesn't care about us. The tarot is there. So I can tell you what it is. What you do with it is your problem.
I'm not a psychologist. I am not entitled to provide the solutions to anybody's problems. I don't have the answers to anybody's questions. I don't know anything about anything. So the only thing I can do is to show you the cards and tell you these cards are connected between them through these shapes, these forms, these rhythms, these patterns. And then you take that, go home, call me in the morning, I don't know.
It just breaks my heart to see someone who is trying to pull more cards until they get the answer that they were hoping for. You know, it's like, when will my boyfriend come back to me? It's very common.
What you want to do is you want to help somebody find their power. You cannot empower somebody, but you can help them find a place.
This is my message for all of those who operate psychic parlors in New York.
The shape of the word psychic is so weird, because you have those, the P, the S, and then the Y, or, you know, you have like this elongated form, and then you have chick, which is like, you know, completely horizontal. There's something unbalanced in that image that I don't like. I don't like the word. And besides, I feel that that word is the flag of people who believe that they are important or interesting or special. The main complaint I get every time I mention I'm a tarot reader is from people who has been victims of psychic rape. And that's simply that they were at a party or somewhere, and a psychic, a very special intuitive person, came and told them horrible stuff out of nowhere. No one has the right to play special and go around raping people with their psychic powers.
Obviously, I think there's still people who let us down, basically, you know, who use their skills and knowledge for, you know, reasons that disappoint everybody else. And I think that's embarrassing.
I've had people come to me and say, you know, this woman predicted that I was going to die in 1998, and it was like terrified because somebody put it in their head.
In a sense, I guess that I kind of envy those fortune tellers, because there is a simplicity in what they do. You come to them, they tell you, I'm going to get married. Yes, Tuesday morning, blonde guy, he's a banker. It's a fantastic exchange.
The Marseille Tarot speaks the language of the birds.
I had this whole understanding of the term based upon myth. And the myths were about heroes who learned the language of the birds. It was said very specifically. To my mind, this was a code for prophecy. Now, the language of the birds meant prophetic visions. Literally, because the birds were seen as, you know, messengers between the gods and earth, between the heavens and the earth, you know. And these beautiful, beautiful sounds they made, which human beings don't know what they are. So if you understood them, you'd understand what the gods are saying to us via the bird's song.
The language of the birds asks from us to be dumb and to drop any pretension. While we are like this, and we need our crowns, scepters, status symbols, we need to pretend we're in control, the bird is fake. It's just this image painted on a shield, you know. As soon as we drop all pretensions and we just are, you know, the bird comes to us naturally. She's in complete contact with the landscape, and then the bird comes on its own. Any intellectual approach, any forceful approach to the language of the birds end up in something that is completely fake. But then when we are dumb, when we are just there, when we look at what is in front of us, the actual language of the birds emerge.
It's being able to look at the cards and just react to the pictures, the images, without having a constructed meaning around them. You know, which to my mind, you know, goes back to being able to look at the pictures and look at things and experience them directly.
The Emperor is the card number 4. And shows a man looking at a number 4 and trying to imitate the number 4 with his legs. So in the language of the birds, the image says, follow the sign.
The idea of the language of the birds is that, you know, things sound like other things. And so you can make connections with what sounds like what. And in tarot cards, what looks like what?
There is this word with all the 5 vowels that means beautiful thinking. And then there is this other word with all the 5 vowels that means bird. And a bird is a beautiful thought, metaphorically. A word is a bird waiting for the breeze of our breath to fly. You do need to experience the images. You do need to look at them, and you do need to let the images elicit something in you. If I talk about the emperor, I cannot help myself with thinking about the hangman or the world card because they share the same leg posture as the emperor. But you bridge images and you again create narratives and you create these little systems. That sense of beauty is the sense of beauty that then you apply to the entire world to understand things that are different or are distant, and you can then bring together, which is basically what we do through metaphor and through poetry. I'm not interested in using the tarot to write poetry. When we look at the cards and we talk about the cards, that in itself is a poetic act. The way I like to see it is that the tarot is not so much hiding or concealing or passing on a spiritual truth, but the tarot is a tool that can help us to see. If you have experienced the tarot, you know that it moves you. It moves you in the same sense that if you get into a church or a cathedral, you feel moved, even if you are not religious, even if you don't believe in God. So my suspicion is that the wisdom that is being passed on in the tarot is craftsmanship.
So when I moved here, people who work with me were very concerned about me getting the right cup of coffee. Whomever comes from any other country where there is some sort of coffee culture, regular coffee, American regular coffee, is just like dirty water, you know, it's horrible for them. And what I found is that there is such thing as a good cup of regular American coffee. The only way to find that out is by dealing with it. You develop the sensibility to understand which one is the good one, which one is the bad one. You can't do that from outside. You can't do that if you don't engage with the coffee. And I feel that that's very similar to what happens with the tarot and with the Marseille tarot, you know. If you don't engage with the images and you spend time with them, you bounce back and you just say, no, this is too crash, too harsh, too simple, too not enough fairy dust or whatever. But if you get into it and you really work with the images, then it's like the coffee. You start developing the sensibility for the images, and you start developing an understanding, a taste for the images, to the point in which you start enjoying them and seeing the difference.
The beauty of working with the Dodal deck is that the pictures are basic. The colors are basic. It's difficult to get lost. It doesn't have 150 years worth of esoteric mishmash slammed onto it.
Muy bien.
No.
Mira, ¿tú oyes esto? Sugar. We have brown, like the wands, blue, like the swords, pink, like cups, yellow, like coins. Cups turning into coins, swords turning into wands. Exactly the same way we do our reading with cards. We can do a reading out of sugar. And it's nice how something that is pink can turn yellow and then can turn blue. You can see the four suits, wands, swords, coins, and cups everywhere. Wait, Andrea, mira. Something that have become very, very clear to me making this film is that I hate the look of a tarot reading on a table. Even myself, I hate the way I look sitting on a table, having a person across the table and with the cards. I find it a horrible cliche that it somehow doesn't represent anything I stand for. I'm looking for alternatives to that.
Le quotidien, lui, concrètement, est armé en béton.
I do believe that the images are beautiful enough, and a lot of people who are not interested in angels or chakras or anything esoteric or occult, they are given the opportunity to approach the images from another point of view.
There's no movement really, and then he may be lonely, but he's standing and he's walking, maybe looking back into this old direction, but then the third one, there's all this movement and there's nothing static about it.
When I work on art projects, it has happened to me to use the tarot as a tool to kind of expand my imagination when I'm stuck, or when I need some more inspiration in general. I get lost in the images, you know. I don't really try to focus on one image. I just my mind gets lost in the whole thing. It's almost like a hypnosis kind of thing.
Eventually, it could be more interesting to me just to show people the tarot and show how the tarot works and how we can look into it and notice all these beautiful things going on instead of reading the cards for them in a fortune-telling kind of setup. We literally look down at the tarot. There is no way we can respect an image if we always look down at it. We need to put those images somewhere else. Actually, relevant images, important images, they are not below our head. They are up the wall. They are big. They force us to physically move up, lift up, not to be like this, you know, like depressed or like basically like reinforcing a sense of their own irrelevance.
A whole reading could just be this precise situation in which I just put a card there and walk away. So the next person who comes finds this image in the middle of nowhere, you know, and somehow then the image in itself becomes an experience. It is the experience of finding the image on the street, the experience depicted in the image, the way that experience connects to the experience a person has had, and somehow how that experience then gets into the card, and the whole event of finding an unexpected image in the middle of nowhere, that becomes the reading.
Strand, through millions of stations, I see a second chance. Strand, through millions of stations, I see a second chance.
The average client who approaches the tarot, who wants a tarot reading, they are not ready, inclined, or interested to get any kind of pleasure whatsoever from the experience. They want facts, they want information. They are completely closed in their own, manias or manic behaviors in which give me the answer, give me the number, give me the name, give me the date, and there is no sense of pleasure in what they are doing. And I always tend to, I mean, it seems to me that the tarot just happening on the table, in your hands, is so beautiful, and then we just come and ruin it. We need to make it useful, we need to make it meaningful, and it just becomes madness.
I told him that he should get maybe out of tarot, out of this community of tarot, because he has so much to give. And in the tarot world, another tarot reader is not worth too much, but in the other world, and he's very creative, he can bring so much more input.
He makes himself present, you see, to the readers, even to the tarot cards themselves, which is a form of showing respect.
The American Indians have a method of divination where if you have a question, you walk out into the desert, and this is specifically kind of a desert Indian kind of thing, and you walk around the desert until one rock speaks to you louder than any other rock, and you sit down and you pick it up, because your answer is in the rock. It's very simple, it's very straightforward. Enrique does the same thing, except rather than going out into a desert to find a rock, you're going to pull 3, 4, 5 cards and read the story that card is telling you. You know, what's she doing? There's this woman holding this mouth open of a big cat. What the heck is she doing?
I cannot say that enough. I have an understanding of life through art, through the power of images, which for me is very technical, very practical, very down to earth, and that's the way I approach the tarot. That's the only way I can understand the images of the tarot, and somehow that excludes any esoteric, supernatural, paranormal, spiritual approach. It took you to look at a stuffed thing that was half a giraffe and half a horse, because I find it amazing. And I completely understand that someone will find a beautiful angel with, purple wings, completely beautiful. We are just getting off with different things. I have been fascinated by taxidermy all my life. They are wonderful, absurd objects, half sculptor, half animal, half ex-living being. Like, death is somehow not present just because they are there. I'm in love with this thing. It's beautiful. ¿Por qué? ¿En serio? Up until a couple of years back, he will tell people that I was some sort of clown and magician. But I think that perhaps now they have a better idea of what the tarot is. I mean, I never really talked to them about it in a direct sense. We talk about paying attention to reality. Okay?
The shadow looks like a gun too.
Yeah, of course, it's true. I mean, it would be great if the shadow can become something else. A mouth, an eye. It's like a dinosaur.
And Enrique is a very special person. I almost think he belongs to another century.
I love what he's doing. I think what he's doing is amazing. I really enjoy the free-flowing approach. The approach of poetry, nothing being set, everything being open.
I mean, anybody who has an art education, which I know Enrique does, that's how you interpret art. And the tarot is a work of art.
He is connected by a cord to those cards. He is walking tarot.
Enrique seems to be like a bad boy. He seems to relish being an enfant terrible, and I think we need more people like that.
Bourgeois, sentimental twaddle does not interest him, as it should not. And if we don't have people that are willing to rub people the wrong way, no fires get started.
There is an idea in the tarot, in the trumps, And that idea is, okay, death is unavoidable, and you can only live beyond death by living a beautiful life. To me, the thing with death is that after you die, you don't feel anything. So that's okay. Perhaps one could fear the absence of feeling, because it's abstract, it's impossible to understand. I always think that that's my favorite card, the death card, card number 13. It's beautiful. So you want to ask me something about the tarot? Or?